Okay, so it sounds like the meal is ready. What we'll do is we'll do a blessing of the food. I'm going to ask Deputy Grand Chief Mike Matarawaban to do a blessing of the food. Go grab your plate, come back, and we'll get started at 20 after 5. So, Deputy Grand Chief, pwede mga GM Sigich to offer a blessing.
Amigos, Patrick, minumet joutuu täkoiset. Minä ovattama naskumonano. Mistä minä pego, tietty mitä soi. Se mennä kistäkätik, mistä se mennä skakui. Sitten eikä se ole tohon, missä on kanssa aika kok. Ja kanissa näyttämään, mistä minä Patrick.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. People are just coming in with their meals, so we'll continue eating, but we'll start the next presentation. So again, we have completed the in-camera session. Doors are open. We'll get some fresh air in here. I'd like to welcome back everyone into the room. Also, those joining online, welcome back. We would like to continue with the agenda item dealing with governance. So as part of the agenda dealing with governance matters, I'm going to invite NAN Legal Counsel Mike Sherry to come and make a presentation. And again, it's open for discussion. And after that, we had on the agenda some time for the Elders Council for any remarks, if there are any. So I'm going to look to the Elders Council after this presentation, if there is anybody to address the Assembly. So with that, Mike Sherry.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks for your patience. I know it's been a long day. So this is a general presentation. I do some legal work with the Governance Committee. And so this is a general presentation on the background of the Governance Committee, the resolutions, work they've done, work they plan to do, and that kind of thing. So is someone going to flip the slides? Okay, great. Thank you. Oh, no, I prefer that. Thank you. Okay, so the Non-Governance Committee was established on January 19th, 2023 by Chiefs Assembly Resolution 2306. This was in the context of an investigation of the previous Grand Chief. Main purpose was to improve the governance structure of NAN going forward, taking into account First Nation traditions. The voting core of the committee is 4 chiefs, but there are other representatives, including an elder. So in particular, the Chiefs Assembly, through that resolution, mandated the committee to develop governance policies and procedures that promote the protection of our people, our traditions, our culture, and standards. Further, the review work of the committee includes the gaps in the NAN Executive Council Code of Conduct, which do not address the absence of complaints in writing, historical nature of allegations, express wishes of the alleged victim, and our traditional protocols and practices for dealing with allegations, including restorative and healing outcomes. Those are very particular topics, and they related to issues that came up during the investigation of the previous Grand Chief. It is important to note that the Governance Committee is advisory in nature. That's a point that Chief Constant earlier on in this emphasized. It can review matters and make recommendations to the Executive Council and Chiefs in Assembly. The committee does not have the authority to make any final decisions on substantive matters. Of course, it can make administrative kinds of decisions to keep things rolling, but not on substantive matters. The work of the Governance Committee was confirmed by a NAN Chiefs Assembly Resolution 2314 later that same year in 2023. A resolution directed the committee to review the recommendations of the former Grand Chief investigative report and to create an implementation process for the recommendations. So there were 6 specific recommendations that came out of that report, and they're listed in the actual resolutions as a mandate for the Governance Committee. So we'll just go over those fairly briefly because they are out there in writing. But first recommendation deals with a review of the policies and procedures that address workplace harassment to ensure that systems are in place to protect privacy interests of parties involved in harassment or health and safety complaints. A second recommendation provides for a lessons learned exercise to address policy and procedure gaps for handling workplace harassment complaints. Third recommendation is future complaints involving workplace harassment be vetted with a designated recipient with human resources, and that policy updates reflect this requirement. So that would be designated recipient in the context of NAN staff through human resources. In the case of the Governance Committee, the designated recipient is currently Chief Constant, and so that's still the role of designated recipient, but it relates to the Executive Council and any issues involving the CAO. Fourth recommendation is to implement policy and procedure amendments based on the recommendations presented to the Health and Safety Committee February of 2023. Those are specific recommendations going back to that period. Fifth recommendation, provide training in harassment and violence in the workplace. Following the policy and procedure review, training should be developed for all members of the organization, including executive council. Subsequent ongoing training is recommended for all NAN staff, including reporting processes and confidentiality. Monitoring to be incorporated into any revisions to the policy. Final recommendation calls for facilitating workplace restoration for individuals who have been affected by the relevant incidents and the investigation. And that would be tied in with the previous Grand Chief recommend investigation, but the gist of that would apply to any investigation, depending on the recommendations of the report. So those are in addition to the significant work assigned to the committee by the chiefs through those two resolutions, which I just went through. The governance committee studied certain potential changes to the NAN election procedures for Grand Chief and deputies, and that work took place in the period leading up to the Executive Council election that occurred last year at the Kiwewin. So this is other work that the committee did. In relation to that election procedure, the governance committee reviewed existing provisions of the criminal code record of a candidate. So there's a provision in the election procedures that basically prohibits a person from being nominated if he or she has a criminal record. So that was discussed. After careful review and discussion, the committee did not make any recommendations for change. Nevertheless, the matter was discussed at a subsequent Chiefs Assembly, and the chiefs deferred the decision. So that whether that issue is taken up again depends on lots of things. It depends on direction from the chiefs, executive council, governance committee consideration. It's not a specific deferral in the sense that it has to be talked about, but it can be talked about. The governance committee also considered a change to election procedures that would allow an eligible candidate to run for both Grand Chief and Deputy Grand Chiefs. The purpose of this, as stated in the material at the time, was to promote the retention of experienced and willing First Nation leaders so that they stay within the leadership system at the NAN level. After careful review, the committee did recommend this one change, and the recommendation was approved by Chiefs and Assembly and implemented during the 2024 election. So you can see that's a concrete example of how the process works, where the governance committee studies something, recommends something, and then it goes to finally the Chiefs and Assembly for approval. And in that case, it was approved. The governance committee may review the election procedures change based on the experience of 2024. The process, I think, went smoothly, but there were some concerns expressed by leaders from some parts of NAN. So any further recommendations that people have will be brought to the governance committee and also the executive council and finally Chiefs and Assembly. So obviously it's a couple of years from the next election cycle, but that issue could be reviewed based on some of the concerns that were expressed or not. While the governance committee was fully established by Chiefs Assembly resolutions in 2023, the committee believed it was appropriate to develop terms of reference. So this comes back to a question that was raised earlier. So a draft was developed and carefully considered. It outlines two main functions for the committee. Number one, policy and procedures review. And number two, handling of complaints and notices of occurrence involving the CAO and/or executive council members. A detailed governance committee complaints resolution policy was developed as an attachment to the terms of reference. This policy outlines the role of the designated recipient, one of the chiefs on the governance committee. The policy, as indicated earlier in response to a question, that was developed. The committee has been fully operational since the first resolution was passed in 2023, but the committee felt that a professional term of reference was just good government, and so that has been developed. Still has to be approved by the executive council. The policy and procedures review work of the committee is dictated by the Chiefs and Assembly resolutions and the terms of reference draft. Relevant documents include, of course, the bylaw, NAN election procedures, executive council code of conduct, and of course, traditional law, traditional protocols. Revised terms of reference for the committee are now under consideration. this is something new that just came up recently, just for your information, is that there's the draft revised terms of reference, which were gone through carefully, but this new concept or idea would be to merge the existing finance committee into the governance committee. So rationale, most of the current members of the finance committee are also on the governance committee. Governance committee has already assumed the role of the finance committee under the Executive Council Code of Conduct. The merger should reduce duplication and cost. The matter is still under review, but just to give you an early heads up, that idea is there. So for sure, if any First Nations chiefs have any, reaction to that or ideas, that would be great. The governance committee received harassment policy training in November of 24 from a Toronto law firm specializing in human resources matters. It's just implementation work. The governance committee, through the designated recipient, dealt with an early complaint. An independent investigation was completed. The report will be considered by the Executive Council in due time. So that was an earlier investigation that is at that late stage. But it doesn't, it's different from the one that was the specific one that's under consideration or was under consideration earlier today. Additional complaints against a deputy were brought to the governance committee in early 2025. So this is just the very high level procedure in terms of what the committee's been doing. Obviously, this does not get into the details because that was in camera. But yeah, after careful review, the recommendation was for the council to order an investigation. The investigation is underway. The plan is to consider the final independent report and make recommendations to the Executive Council and possibly Chiefs in Assembly. The report obviously will not be ready for this particular assembly. So that's coming. The Governance Committee is undertaking the policy and procedure reviews mandated by Chiefs in Assembly. However, this work has been delayed by the investigations, which are obviously a priority. The committee will report back to the Assembly as recommendations are developed. There may be a general discussion, governance discussion at the Chiefs in Assembly. I mean, I think that actually occurred in camera. Hopefully it does not occur after my presentation, but that is up to you. The committee is ready to implement any further direction from the chiefs. And just as a wrap up, the committee was created by the chiefs with a general purpose of improving non-governance in accordance with First Nation traditions, subject to time and resource limitations. The committee has endeavored to implement the mandate given by the chiefs in Assembly, including complaints procedure and general policy and procedures review. The mandate is pretty extensive. As noted, the committee is not a decision-making body. Final decisions are all up to the chiefs on substantive matters. So thanks for your patience. I'd be glad to take any questions that I could help with.
I have a question. I have a couple of questions. I was volunteering to draft up a resolution or resolutions in regards to looking at the governance review, and also to look at electoral process based on the youth letter requesting what do they call it? Adopt the new culturally grounded process for electing Grand Chief and Deputy Grand Chiefs. Yeah. So how can I write a resolution when there's a governance committee already that were formalized? There are resolutions pertaining to that committee, right?
Yeah, obviously that discussion was just, evolving like within the last hour, but I don't view those two things as being inconsistent. I mean, the governance committee is there doing its thing, but the kind of resolution you're talking about would be specific direction to do those things. And the governance committee, I would assume would be directly involved in that because it's very much governance work. But it's just, to me, that would be providing more precise and updated direction to the governance committee. So I don't see any conflict at all.
So you're recommending governance committee to to kind of oversee the governance review and the electoral process review?
It would seem to make sense because
Yeah.
that is within the general mandate of the governance committee, but
Yeah,
that's not for me. It makes sense to me, but I mean, but so again, it's always up to the chiefs. It could be, I mean, who else would be tasked with that? I mean, the possibility would be, I guess, the executive council or some sort of other
mhm.
group of people. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the biggest question I have. I was going to oversee the governance review, electoral process. Yeah, those things. Is it a separate? I have no idea.
Well, I mean, the governance committee seems logical because that's sort of in their ballpark, so to speak. But the resolutions, are drafted with the help of the resolutions committee, so we can think about that and work on that. And if you have some ideas, we can incorporate that, but yep. Chief Wesley.
Because this is where I was talking about the panel earlier. There's a clear role for a different panel to work on governance models and the whole election process. And I kind of volunteered a number of people that identified that work for us already. They're very powerful people that run our organizations for us. I named a bunch of people. There's Delaney Fiddler, there's Sadie Maxwell, there's Sharon Nate, Dobie Don Furnett as an example. Those are the ones that should be working on that. And in addition to what what do you call this? Holy smokes, I had a brain fart. The governance committee, in addition to the work that they're doing, because they're not going to have the time to do all this on the ground work. We're going to need people that are dedicated to their work, and these people that I'm naming are dedicated. They're the ones that make our organizations function. And having them do this is just a cookie cutter.
Yeah, I remember that discussion. Yeah. Well, we could, I mean, obviously there'll be a drafting process for the resolution and we could maybe work that in. You're going to do the first draft? Okay, great. Yeah, it's always good to get a first draft for, at least as, yes. Yeah, the resolutions committee. Yep.
So, yeah, so I think we're hearing some suggestions, so that would be dependent on what the wording of the resolution is. But again, it's not my role to say what should be in the resolution, but you might want to consider that you're mandating a terms of reference or something be developed to be brought forward at another assembly. Yeah, I mean, that's as the drafters of the resolution, so. Chief Gagnon.
Yeah, just a question. When a referral is made to the governance committee, the individual that's being referred to the governance committee, do they have, can they be afforded a time to deal with it through like an alternative, resolution, dispute resolution and or elders council or a written warning? Are they afforded?
That can happen. It can happen before or after, in the ones that the ones that I've seen, that often before there's a complaint or a notice of occurrence, what it's called technically, is that often you see a pattern where things have been tried, like discussions and compromises and including elders circles or whatever, so that sometimes attempts like that occur before the notice of occurrence. So that I think that's it certainly does happen that way. And then but even in spite of those, if a notice of occurrence is filed, then it's as Chief Constant indicated, it's reviewed carefully, and it's not like an immediate jump to an investigation report. It's just if the facts as known or alleged are considered. And yes, certainly an outcome is not to go to the investigation, but to suggest like an elders circle or an elders council or that kind of thing. Yep, that's definitely an option. It just depends on each case. Because
Yeah, but, you know, this came on 11 hour on a Friday afternoon. Again, you know, there was never a chance for any process or, you know, something to resolve this without, having to go the full distance of, suspension.
yeah, it's probably not appropriate to get into the details of the particular matter because that was the subject of the in-camera discussion. But I can say as a general matter, like just repeat quickly what I said is that other alternatives are considered usually before the notice of occurrence, and then after the notice of occurrence, they're also considered. So it's not an automatic investigation. But that's probably not appropriate to talk about the specifics of this matter because that was in camera. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. I'm going to be here for the next couple of days if there's any follow-up questions, comments. Thank you.
Miigwech. Thank you, Mike Sherry, for the presentation and the discussion. So next on the agenda, we have the Elders Council. Any concluding remarks and then the closing prayer. So I'm going to look to the Elders Council. I'm not sure. I think they're designating someone right now. And then Jenica Bahamik Rosie Ginting Okabaman. Okay. And then the closing prayer with Rosie Mosquito. And we'll have a song as well as part of the closing. So we'll have is it the prayer and then the drum? Yeah. So we'll have comments initially from the Elders Council. While Rosie's making her way up, just a quick announcement for tonight. So the Sustainable Initiatives Department is inviting chiefs for a working dinner. So that's 7 to 8:30 tonight at Joey Eaton Center. And that's again, Sustainable Initiatives Department, talking about sustainable initiatives, critical minerals bill 5 and the special economic zones. So that'll be a chance to discuss, ask questions, and that'll be at 7 o'clock, just to let you know. Both Rosie and Barney.
Miigwech Adam. Wachi Hukmakanak. Paginanda Gaikut. Eu communique in Paginanda Gaikut Barney Batiste. Which Sakanish Kubaigadik after that. Good afternoon, chiefs and women and youth. I'm going to make just a few brief remarks, and Elder Barney Batiste will also make some remarks, and then we'll close with a prayer. Ebe moskat sanu sam kukun kintawa wem troshim geni. Ken kenda manek chinen dagok kakimino goak mando kukisho nam. It's been nanda ukwenanda nisitano eki. Mipkishim nenda mane apatstoan. Down the dana yeshita. Eko chingo kawa apmaknuitan snim. Mipke apatstoan. And sniman emunendaman. Again, I'm just sharing how I've said in recent assemblies and in other occasions. I have a great comfort and preference to use my language. It wasn't always like that when I was younger. I spoke English probably all the time, most of the time. But it's recent, that I really came to realize, the importance of our God-given right, of our culture, our languages, and our ways. And so in the last 20 years or so, I've that is my preference of language, even as I live in the city. If I'm around friends and family and colleagues that speak our language, that is the language I speak. We're losing it, and I'm not even sure if everybody would understand me in here if I spoke entirely in my language. That will lead into, and that's the way it is. That's the unfortunate experience, that many of us are losing some of our ways. It's not just our language. And so it's important to try and, keep those God-given rights. In the language of the legalese, in international law, nations are defined by a number of factors, very important elements. A nation must have a defined territory. We have those traditional territories. A nation that peoples, have their own culture, their own languages, their own customs, and their own laws. We had our own laws. We still have, and many of us, I think, still practice, our traditional laws and our traditional ways of being. That's very important. And so from the international perspective, we meet many of those criteria. And yes, we sign treaties. A nation signs treaties. So in practical and legal terms, we are nations. Maujik tendagok. Iwe mandoka kishminukoak. The Creator now created us, our nations. So we have some idea as elders on what may have been discussed in the in-camera session, and I'm pleased to hear that that there have been. I'm sure there were difficult discussions, but I'm glad that there were some positive resolutions, decisions that were made for next steps, to complete the investigation, to have both sides of the story, and an organizational review. Perhaps that is a long time in coming. And I first became involved with our people in 1979 when my chief hired me when the tribal councils were formed. And so over these years, I haven't missed very many meetings, 40 years or so. I have probably been up to roughly, say, 75% of the meetings. And I've seen the growth of our people. I've seen the tremendous development, positive development of our people. The nation building processes that occurred in the last millennium, in the last century. Because there was a lot of, this is when a lot of our organizations were developed, they were created. Our people sought and pursued and achieved education. We know the ways of the non-Indigenous ways. We have used, some of their tools and their knowledge for the benefit of our people. And that is good. And incidentally, that's one of the reasons why I went to university here in Toronto in 1980. I studied political science because I wanted to know how government operated, or how governments were structured. I wanted to know how they operated so I would know how to advocate and fight for our people. And it has helped me in all the work that I've done over the years. And it's been within the Nishnawbe Aski Nation with all these different organizations. Lots of good growth. And, but there have also been the downsides. That has also been an observation. And I shared those observations with the elders this morning before the assembly. I talked about how over the years I have seen the departure of some of our ways, departure from some of our practices, and departure from some of our processes, and a departure from our forms and ways of decision making, a departure from traditional forms of governance. I said those very same words, sharing, with the elders this morning before the assembly started. And I shared those observations out of concern. While we've had positive, tremendous growth, I think in all honesty and giving the benefit of the doubt to everyone, we have some of us, sometimes myself too, have used and adopted non-Indigenous ways of being and doing things. Ook makana kia ka kiship mochikiwat. Mia eskam isnagwak. And iwetas gochi na chumkaya. Yenine bemuskatsian. Ma jekik tag maganoat kchihag. Kchihage kik tog naganoat eonashwanwak. I saw that in my dashikionik and magai shoptaman. Genine uskatsian ekiuk makanoan. I was 26 years old. 26 eta sakiunean. Egone uchinki kanona panik kchihak. Chuawi chishwat. Chuitapum koaka onashuyak. And during a merge mekoche enikani tamakehan. Every month, tasupisum. Ngi mawachamnak, kiwitapum goak eonashoyak. Kim shin wa kwemekwach, asham shin, ashakakna, ashandokokaknan kinaganogoman. Eskam tasso, eskam nishap, ekitaswat, eki maminumugoak, eki ayagomumugoak. Ego ge kim quasum goak, ge geshmant nentamak, ego miniwe geshubamant katamak. So when I was chief, growing in the community, I saw, heard, learned, observed, the important role of our elders, the elders who supported the local leadership. And when I became chief, I called on them right away, probably within a day or two of being elected. And I said, I want to meet with you. I want you to meet with us. I need your support. And we met every month. And in those days, we had very many elders. There'd be anywhere from 10 to 12, 8 to 12. We met every month. They counseled us. They advised us. They reminded us, of the various community issues. I learned so much, from those elders. And the advice that they gave to us. And in the years that I was also involved after the community level and the tribal council level, elders are integrally involved. Tribal council meetings, we had an elder from every community come to every meeting. These chiefs meetings, most of the chiefs used to bring their elders with them, sometimes with their youth. Elders are front and center. That first chiefs meeting I was taken to for orientation and learning, the All Ontario Chiefs Conference in 1979, I took pictures. I have some of those pictures. Lots of elders. Lots of community representation. I come from Bearskin Lake. It's the second most northerly community in Ontario. And our councils traveled at great expense to go to Toronto. MC not, many of us. No scheduled flights. Chartered out of Bearskin into Sulikout, and that's what I saw in the early days when I was young and I was getting involved. And sad to say, the role of the elders have diminished. It has diminished over those years from what I've seen 40 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe up to year 2000, and their role has been lesser and diminished. So this morning, I was talking about the importance of how we have to keep our ways. And I guess culture, our nation building processes there was a flourish of activity before year 2000. And so I'm glad to hear that there have been good discussions, that there's going to be an organizational review, and perhaps, in addition to all the issues that you've discussed internally, perhaps those will be discussed. And I guess one of the roles of elders is also to remind leadership, of the way it was and the way and what we should try and keep. So this may have been the first assembly, or there was another one a year ago, where the elders were asked to leave the room. And the elders, as I say, were always an integral part of the discussions. That was our form of governance. And so when I say there has been some departure, from some of our practices, some of our governance, ways of governance, this is one of them. It's the very thing I talked about this morning. But we all grow, we all learn, we evolve, and so it is a good decision that you have made amongst yourselves as chiefs to hold the organization accountable to its original purpose. Yes, we grow and evolve, but the fundamental values, spiritual values and traditions and governance of our people should never be disregarded, should not be left behind, because it is why we have survived as a people. That's what keeps us going. That's the strength. And so, you know, as my chief actually said this morning, the model reminds us of the model: unity, strength, and success. You know, it is through unity that great achievements have been made and can be made. More great achievements can be made in the years going forward. So I'm glad, you know, I'm heartened, you know, I'm to hear that there will be a review of the organization to how to make it stronger, especially with the threats, you know, facing our people, the threats to the territorial integrity, the integrity of our territories. Governments, provincially, nationally, and internationally, are eyeing our lands and resources. We're one of the very last frontiers in Canada, full of wealth and resources. So we have all kinds of eyes looking down, greed and green-eyed monsters looking at our lands and resources. I was also saying to the elders, when I heard of King Charles coming to deliver the speech from the throne, it would have been a good idea to try and seek an audience with King Charles, because it is with England that we sign treaties with, to remind them of the honor of the crown, especially when we're facing great threats, our lands and resources. I wish me now more than ever in the past. So I mean, I didn't intend to speak at great length, but those are the things that come to mind that I feel impelled to share. Barney Gunandadikit.
You've had a hard day. I won't keep you very long. I'd like to recognize the people in the room, our Grand Chief, deputies, the chair, chiefs. You've had a good day. You have to think positive, unquestionably, about things that have happened here. And then we have to work at the strength that we have as a group to be able to complete the process that we started. In my world, it says it's shameful to do nothing. It's shameful to do nothing. And the next thing is no one wins alone. That just doesn't happen. So it takes group consensus. It takes a group of people to work together in order to make this work. It is a corporation. You know, the peculiar part of this journey for myself, from quite a while, when Adam first came to chair, way back when. As a matter of fact, even before that, when he was going to school in Thunder Bay, we talked about traditional practice and what is it. And it was back then when I started talking about watch you don't lose the way you were taught. The Creator gave you that. You keep that well. As soon as you forget who you are, where you come from, and what your responsibilities are, you are going to have trouble. That's where you're headed. So you need to remember those things. So when Adam and I talked about it, we talked about this forum. And remember, I chaired many of these forums as well. Many of them. And I remember a lot of tiresome days when it came down to having the resolutions. And some of you might remember that. And we tried really hard as a chair to go through those things. And sometimes we went through them too fast. And we forgot what the essence of the resolution actually is. We've done that in our past. But when Adam and I have been, since I've met him, we talk about our own traditions, who we are as a people, quite often. And you know, in recent years, we've often talked about this forum. And how many times have that Adam said, it's your meeting. You make the decisions. And finally today, I think we broke through, and I was talking to Adam about that. Hey, Adam, it's working. All those things we talked about. The spiritual journey that we're on, the kinds of things that we see. We got there. We're there. So now it's the work to complete what you've started today. You got the ball rolling, complete the work. And I hope that, you know, it's up to the chiefs. It's your forum. But one thing that you have to know, within a year from now or 2 years from now, we probably won't see the same faces. Be some, maybe, that will be successful in their election, but there will be a lot that maybe won't. So what do we have to do? We have to set the stage for the future in looking at those people and making sure that Nishnawbe Aski Nation is strong and prepared. And it has some rules around it that other people can follow. That needs to happen. Because that's one of the things that really bothered us over the years that I saw, is the change in the guard. New income. And I was one of those people a long time ago that said there should be training for the chiefs coming into this forum. That's a long time ago that I said that, you know, because, you know, when people are going into government, they get trained. They just don't walk in there. And so this governance model you're talking about, you'll need training. As far as composition and looking at elders, you know, I don't mind being out of the room if the chiefs want to have their own meeting. I don't mind that, but you need some sort of policy around that so that we can know that that's going to happen. So you're not going to maybe hurt somebody else's feelings along ahead, you know. So I think it'd be a good idea to take a look at that and how that's going to happen. That includes the women and the youth council. We need something that says, okay, you guys want to have your own meeting? Great. You want your own accomplishments? Great. But we need to know that those things are going to happen, because I've been away from some meetings because, you know, the chiefs wanted their own meeting, and that happened to me at the Chiefs of Ontario, and it wasn't too pleasant. Because they asked me to leave the room, and I said, oh, you know, they asked me, why are you here? And I said, well, I'm here to help. And it wasn't too long. I said, well, this is a Chiefs meeting. And we were asked to leave. There was two of us, and it wasn't too pleasant. But however, the way you people handled it today, it's good. It's good. We knew that that was coming, so it was good. But you need something moving ahead. You're going to have something that'll take place. The last thing I would tell you is that I would deeply, deeply encourage those people that are working at this process to try to fast track some of it. There are people hurting within our organization. There is some deep hurt that went on, and you guys know it because you've sat here and probably talked about it. So you're going to have to take a look at some of that. Very early on, I was approached by some of our managers, and they said, Barney, we need help. They told me, I've never seen it this bad. And how could I help? It was difficult, really difficult. Some of them managed to stay on and complete their task, and others have, unfortunately, some have left us. And it didn't have to. So I hope that you can fast track some of the stuff to in HR to be able to manage the people that work for us. So I think I'll stop there because you know the lay of the land. You've talked about it. And you probably talked about some things that are near and dear to you. And you come to this conclusion. It's a good thing. So now we just need to work. There is probably nothing more that I can say. Only that I'd like to end by saying we just simply have to remember who we are and who we're serving. So simple, but yet so hard. We have to do that. And in a positive way, you did that today. And you have to keep that up. I would say at your next meeting, if the chiefs want to meet by themselves, I would say, yeah, go ahead. It's your corporation. You do that. After this day, I think it'll be easier for you to say that because you govern it. I say that for two reasons. One, for the corporation itself. Secondly, for myself as a non-voting member of the executive. Sometimes I worry about where NAN is going. And because my name appears as a non-voting member. And sometimes I think, what if this thing crashes? Where am I? So I have some skin in this game. And that I concern myself that way. So I hope that you will continue to look after corporate matters. I hope that you continue to meet when you have to meet together and to be able to make those decisions like you made today. I congratulate you for what you've done today. Good job. Good job. But now you have to continue that good job. And the way you're going to do it is belief with the drum in the middle here, with the elders, with the youth, and Mr. Wabas, who's sitting right here. Good words. So I will leave you with that. There is so much that aches inside of me about what I want to say. So much, just like you. So much, because I know the need is so great. We have out there 18 to 20-year-old young men and women who are lost. We have drug dealers out there who do harm to us. We have to do that. We have children that want to continue their education that need the money to do that. We have children in care. We have all of those issues. And as the Grand Chief says this morning, we're losing people too. Some good people. And some of those losses are a direct result of drug use. That we have to follow. I will leave you with that thought that says, when you looked at the Haida Gwe in British Columbia, what did they do? They knew the drug house, right? What they did is they destroyed those homes, flattened them right out. They BCR'd those people right out of there. Banishment, they call it. That's what they did. And when those people left there was 5 First Nations down the road. Those First Nations didn't sell them any gas, no food, no nothing. You're out of here. So I think if we get strength, maybe we can sell some of those drug dealers in our homes. Get out of here. Go on, get out of here. There's too many of us that know the drug dealer. We know them. And we don't do anything. We know the house, the home, we know where they are, but we don't do too much. So I hope maybe when the chiefs meet by themselves and look at the corporation and look at the needs of our people, that you will discuss some of that and come to a conclusion, some kind of conclusion around it. And see if you can do something about that. Those things. And there's a litany of things that need to be done. And let me tell you, I believe in our Grand Chief. He's the elected person, he's there. Honorable. He's there to do a job for us. I believe in our deputy chiefs. They're there to do a job for us. And we just gotta look after that. We need to look after this. I have never seen yet our Grand Chief looks so tired. You want to know what? That hurts. That's not good. That is not good. We need to praise these people, every one of them, and bring them up so that they can do their work. I think you realize that. And let me tell you something else before I leave here. What's happening in today's world is called legislation. And I was warned by one of the higher ups in talking with them, Barney, be careful. Legislation is coming. And this won't be the last legislation that you're going to see that's coming up on mining. There will be others. Why did they do that? Because it's harder for us to argue against it. We are not allowed to be part of the writing of a legislation. I've tried that. That belongs to the cabinet committee and others. So what happens in order to push, the pushback is legislation. So when the legislation comes, it's really hard for us to work it. So that's coming down the road. And you're going to meet that, I think, day after tomorrow. I think it's 105 or something, that legislation with mining. Yeah, it's coming. And so maybe you want to think about those things. That's political, of course, but that's your job. So again, I think I would ask that you show total respect to our leaders. Yes, there may have been problems. Yes, there may be some aches and pains, but they still are elected leaders. And so I would like you to respect that to the best of your ability. I really bothered me to see how tired some of these men were and women. Not good, just not good. And some of you chiefs will know how that feels. I know how it felt for me. I walked the floor many nights wondering, what am I gonna do? Nishnawbe Aski, you're going to look after your indigenous people. And you will own your children. That is your job as chiefs. Your job to look after that. And so remember that. And there's unity, there's strength, there's success. Come on, let's just do it. Get on with it. You showed that today. Let's carry on. I'll tell you, don't wind up like Toronto Maple Leafs. Died right at the end. Oh, geez, they were just about there and bang, they're gone. Don't do that to yourself. Just work our way through it. And look at, I really want to thank you for allowing me to be part of your life just for a little while anyway. I'm glad to be of some help to you. And I want to thank you very much for that. You know, it's really good. And so to my colleagues as well, that's sharing one behind me, we really thank you for that. And I hope that we can continue to, I guess, work together with the elders the way we normally do. Carry on. And just don't get complicated. Just do the job, right? That's us. Just do the job, get it done. You know what needs to be done. Just do it. And remember, it's shameful to do nothing. So get on with it. So miigwech, thank you again.
Miche eka kwechum sopanin tsaka paman hoenokum. Kak mawachit nan, mawachitiek. Amia. Amia ksemando knana kumko. Mina hoe kaki mincha kaki skak. Eko mina maskausiwan kaki mina to ukmakanak. Nokum Tamawachitot, Chatastamuat, Equanon Kekonan ka Xine Dagwakin, Gakten Dagwakin. Manotas Chikewan, Ekeyamakak, Equakian Mamo, Unentamuat, Equanon Kekonan Kenapumant Katekin. Kananakum Kohiwe, Maskausiwan. Kaki minato eko kuka mincha kweta sukiska pematsuan eminchak mamut nentaka ma kej mamut nentamak mamota sichakatekin ikuenan kekunan kakchinen dakwakin kapaksen dakwakin chken maminsek chansasho sosek Janamonsek, Vede Aninikan, Ka Koakanoat and Shinok, Equa Michiska Quecham Goan, Chishawenim Shiak, Wekan Unaksik, Chikanwenim Shiak, Equamina Quek, Janu Anushinoat, Equamina Tochinak and Nekeo, Umamit Nechikanoa, Weken Defka Quek, Janushinoat Mina. Nakskatatwa twapanik. Mina gyabich nanaka gekonan chitastamwat. Mamo kwek chitastamwat. Mamo chunaswatamwat. Ikwenwan kaispaksen kwakan keucha washmewi chakanawat. And shunak wete kauchiak kiwetnik. Mr. Hikuchanamenta moneak. Matseoneak, Nanotesseonen, Emshak, Emshinatkan, Machiniquanon Kekunan, Enatoendaquakan, Equa Epaxenum Coan, Chuichato, Chuichishiak, Gwenwan. Chenka kweta tepene kehtamo kunoat anshunok mamamo kaisuitan kimtnanok. Emiektisin kaisonek ei se mehtakuan huekaunaksak. Eko kananahkum kokakna kekun kaimitsiak kaissavenimsiak. Emiektisin kaisonek ei se mehtakuan. Amen.